So we have the mage versus wild mage debate. And on the sorcerer side, those who are blessed with divine or draconic heritage and blood, vanilla sorcerer or dragon disciple. Now, I'm going to make the case in this podcast. And I enjoy playing arcane classes. I love playing mages. I love playing sorcerers. I would say most of my runs through Gate involve this in various different builds. I'm going to argue for the Dragon Disciple. Then I'm going to turn it over to the comments, and let's see what we can do. And then in part two, we're going to talk about mage versus specialized mages versus wild mage. So the reason why I like Dragon Disciple, right away as a mage class, you've got access to spells per level. You jump down to sorcerer, and now you can cast more, but you have less of a selection on there. So you really have to decide, what are you going to take? And this will be kind of a side vlog podcast later. Naturally, you want to take spells that scale. So magic missile, lightning bolt, fireball. You want to take spells that even if they have less use as the game progresses, they'll always have some sort of use. Say like charm person. We're just looking at level 1 spells. Mage armor, shield, yeah, they're good. And you know what? As a mage, as a wizard early on, mage armor can be pretty big, but you have the flexibility to swap it out later on. You don't have that with the sorcerer, so you really need to figure out what you're going to pick, what you're going to do. Side note, okay, in theory, I'm having access to use scrolls and wands. You can supplement a little bit, but that gets kind of pricey on there. That can add up, and there are a limited number of spells in the game. No spoilers. Baldur's Gate 1, it is possible to get Cloud Kill. And that is a game changer, but it's only one scroll. I'm not going to tell you where. It's only one scroll. And then you got to have the level and the ability to do it. Even casting it just once, at the final fight could make a big difference on there. But reading it from the scroll, that's rare and pricey. But you could do that with the sorcerer. You can supplement. Well, now we're putting it, we're stacking it even lower with Dragon Disciple in that we're giving up already limited resources and in terms of spells. And the one thing that makes the sorcerer so powerful, the ability to cast multiple spells, large number of spells, you're paring that back by 1. But look at what you're gaining. All right, fire resistance. Okay, I'm not going to turn it down, but it's certainly not game-changing. Oh, I should say for a moment, I'm just making the assumption here that when I'm developing a character or I'm playing a character, I will run the character through Baldur's Gate 1, Siege 2, and then Throne on there. Obviously, for whatever reason, if you're like, look, I just want to build this character and run it through BG1, that build and the limitations or the advantages is going to be vastly different than taking it through the entire game. And of course, then we layer on, are you going to do pure solo? Are you going to do co-op with other party members? Are you going to do kind of 50-50, maybe early on solo, later on co-op? So there are additional layers. So I'm looking at the Dragon Disciple long-term on there. Fire resistance, okay. Now you get the Dragon Breath pretty early on. It's a nice little ability, but it has a very, I'm being honest, and I love the class, it has a very limited window of use on there. In that the ability to bake and kind of nuke everything on this arc, you need to be exact with how it's working, and it's good for hobgoblins, it's good for skeletons, it's good for lesser mobs, but then as you move up, it doesn't scale as much, and then you get into resistances and you get other things. It's nice. Again, I won't turn it down, but I tend to use it in the beginning and then later on in a run where if you're like, things aren't going too well, and basically anything that I can click and activate, I'm clicking and activating just to do a little bit of damage, just to get something out there. The armor class adjustment, okay. The big thing for me with this class is the constitution adjustments. And one of them comes early on, one of them comes much later. But if you can get that con up to 18, then you get tomes, then you get items, then you get the innate +1 and then later on +1 boost. You start to be able to regenerate a lot. And that's really, really nice to have. Because it's nice to have because if you cast invisibility or if you move away or if you use other spells to get out of the way, where you break combat, but some of the combats out there, the really powerful combats, without giving away any spoilers, you can break combat, but you can't really rest or you can't really pull away. You're trapped in that kind of area, that play area, that screen. It's nice when needed to kick back and regenerate a little bit, get that pumping. So as high as I can get that up, we're going to do that. The other interesting thing is, and it's a slight shift, the hit dice. Having more hit dice means with the Constitution bonus on there, you can now have a much bigger hit point pool. You're kind of up there with some of the thief classes in terms of hit point pools. And as you advance and level up, especially if you can boost the con, with that, I'm not going to say you're not a frontline fighter. You're not going to be a secondary fighter like a monk. But given the abilities of spells and buffs, the Dragon Disciple is actually kind of an interesting, unique fighter. So what you see is kind of like a magical fighter on there. I don't want to say like Hexblade or to pull in some other D&D references, but something really, really unique in that you can have your glass cannon spells and your really powerful spells. But then with the buffs, combined with the debuffs, combined with the ability to get in there and combat it out with some better than average hit points, certainly as a mage. Again, you're not a fighter. I'm not suggesting that. But it opens up not only a lot of different tactical things, but for those fights where for whatever reason, when your spells run dry and your stuff runs dry and you've been going solo and it's literally down to, you've got one little green bar left, they've got one red bar left, and you got to go toe-to-toe, it works. And it's a lot tougher than you think on there. On the opposite side, if you don't want to build in kind of a little bit of a fighter into your Dragon Disciple, just having that hit point boost, being an arcane class, is massive. So for the early on and auto regen, and of course there's other ways to do that on there with other characters, and I'm a big fan of that with any character. Disciple just does that quicker. But the difference in hit points, for me, is the biggest change and the biggest difference.